right, so I'm getting ready to do an embroidery project. You may have seen me prepare my embroidery hoop with a wooden one. Sometimes they're actually a little bit easier. The plastic is a little more flexible, but when you put your inside hoop underneath your fabric, remember, you want to be mindful about what fabric you're using. If I'm using the entire piece, I can move the hoop around as I go through my project. But if I'm only using a little bit, then I would want to go into the corner, and that way I can save more fabric for the next project. All right, so here, the whole point of the embroidery hoop is to get the fabric nice and tight. If this outside hoop is too loose, when I go to put my fabric on, you see it's still really kind of wobbly here. So sometimes I actually have to tighten here first, so that way when I go to tighten the fabric, it will pull the fabric on the side. So I had to do a little bit more, because then it forces it. There's more tension and it forces it to be tight. So you can get it tight like that. If it still feels a little too loose, try to tighten a little bit more before. That's more of the sweet spot to get my fabric nice and tight. And then I tighten the top here to make sure that the fabric stays put while I'm working with it, okay? And then I've got my embroidery thread. It's about the length of my arm with a little bit more, so it's not too cumbersome to use. And you can thread your needle a couple different ways. One way that sometimes works well is to get your thread really tight right here, and then you can just push this on through, and sometimes that works really well. Just in case if that's tricky for you, you probably have some paper on hand. You just cut a piece of paper and fold. I recommend you fold the paper first, then you cut a little strip, and then that paper can be used kind of like a little train going through a very skinny tunnel to get your thread through. Okay, so whatever way you need to do it, it takes a lot of practice at first, so try not to get too frustrated with yourself if it doesn't come out the first time, or a second time, or a third time. When we're making a knot, right, there's different methods. You could do a U, then make an X, then get that pass through. Another thing you can do is just kind of make the U around your finger, twist, and then I'm gonna flip my hand kind of in a weird way so you can see what I'm doing. I'm pushing that thread on to my finger, so that way when I push this loop around and push this thread through, now I've got a nice little knot. Sometimes one knot will do, sometimes you need to put that knot there in the middle and do a second one. And that allows you to anchor your thread in the back of the fabric so that it doesn't go through the fabric. So I want to show you just some cool things that you can do with just a basic running stitch. So the running stitch is going to come underneath. That knot is anchoring my thread in place so it doesn't come out. And then we're just going to go a certain length, like boop, right here, push the needle back through. Being very careful here because this is a sharp needle, but I grab it and pull. And then I like to kind of, it's almost like a little shark fin coming out of the water. I like to see where my needle's about to go before I push. It gives me an idea of where I'm going. And then boop, just right back through. And again, if at first you need to look while you're still getting used to it, go ahead. And this is definitely a type of art form where focus is a safety concern, right? Or a safety precaution. Because if you're not really paying attention, that's when you can poke yourself. And so this is a running stitch. And it creates this kind of dashed line. My kindergartners often say it's like the middle of a street, right? The line that divides the cars. but I can just do so many nice patterns with just that stitch. So I recommend your first time practicing, really expect that it's going to be a little tricky at first, and you might have to try practicing putting your hoop or setting up your fabric inside your hoop many times, and you may have to practice threading your needle many times. And as you're working, your thread may come out of the needle like that. And the best I can tell you is to take a deep breath, because these things happen when we're making art a lot. We don't see them as often, but the more we practice and the more we go through those frustrating moments and calm ourselves and get right back to what we were doing, the better that we get as in our art skills. But it takes a lot of persistence. So I'm enjoying this stitch. I think I'm just gonna take this stitch all the way around. So I hope you have a lot of fun just practicing with the running stitch. And then as you get more confident with that, we can try some other stitches. Have fun.